Hello everyone, thank you for clicking on my video. My name is Melody Pennington and I'm going to give you a little brief rundown of the case study project that I worked on in this class with you guys. My case study was examining a niche horror writing community on a subreddit forum in the lens of social support theory. So my sensitizing topic was social support theory, and I was really analyzing how that theory exerted itself and came into play on a niche writing community on Reddit, which was called r/Tales from the Creeps, which is an offshoot of r/Creepcast, which is actually a companion subreddit for a podcast known as Creepcast, where they read scary stories. With the success of Creepcast and the podcast, many fans ended up creating their own stories and submitting them to the Creepcast subreddit, and the Creepcast production team got a little bit overwhelmed and said, hey guys, if you want your story featured on the Horror Story podcast, please upload your stories to this new Reddit that's called r/Tales from the Creeps. So what was interesting about it was r/Tales from the Creeps originally started as this very competitive ecosystem. The entire board was created so that users could upload their stories, and the ones that were deemed to be popular would maybe get a chance to be featured on the podcast Creepcast. There was a little bit of discourse during this period where r/Tales from the Creeps had been created, because many users who had been veterans of the r/Creepcast forum said that this was going to be a popularity contest and it would be impossible for newer authors to get featured, and it would become this cutthroat writing environment that would have negativity. There was a little bit of hesitancy with the fans of this podcast when the new subreddit was created. But what I found was, being a part of the r/Tales from the Creeps community and participating in horror writing, as well as observing all of the other users' activity on the forum, instead of a cutthroat ecosystem, what grew was this very productive and encouraging environment that was just teeming with social support, which is why I chose social support theory as my sensitizing concept to examine this subreddit through the lens of. One of the first themes that I found while observing this forum was that social support isn't just an interaction or an exchange on this forum. Social support theory makes itself clear through the actual infrastructure of how this forum operates. And essentially, this forum started out, like I said earlier, as something very competitive. But what I found was that the very nature of this environment is very healthy. Upvoting, sharing, commenting, direct messaging users, all of that is significant, just like it is on any platform. Everybody wants likes on Instagram. Everybody wants likes on Facebook, likes on TikTok, etc. Upvotes are the same way. But what I found unique about this forum is that, like I said earlier, support is a part of the infrastructure, and the users were actually developing their own methods of praising one another that had nothing to do with the actual features of the Reddit interface. So aside from upvotes and comments, they were creating these scoring posts. Specifically, in one part of my study, there is one user on the forum that gathered up multiple stories and scored them based on entertainment value, pacing, prose, several writing features. Then he took that data and he compared it to performance of the post, how many likes it got, how many shares it got, the kinds of comments and responses it got, and he took all of that information across 37 different stories. He read 37 different pieces of microfiction and flash fiction and compared them in a way that was not only critical and, rooted in criticism, but also rooted in social support. He was encouraging these authors and basically showing them how they can improve their work. What grew from this community was essentially a small writing boot camp. Secondly, that I found that social support and the social support theory were examined in this case. When compliments and praise were given, compliments and praise were more likely to be received back or returned. And that's because the social support in this scenario is not only encouraged, but you're encouraged if somebody reads and leaves a constructive or positive comment on your story, you are encouraged to go to their page and read one of their stories and do the exact same thing. And what grows out of this is a very tightly knit community of successful and confident writers. The conclusion or takeaway of my case study was that this is an anomaly because the online atmosphere of especially, writing communities can get very competitive, and this ecosystem was specifically designed to be a little bit competitive. It was designed with the idea that popular stories would get featured on a very popular YouTube channel and podcast. And instead, what grew was a very closely knit community of writers who typically spread positivity. In my case study, I actually relate this to and reference two specific pieces of peer-reviewed articles that talk about how in writing communities, in this case, these peer review articles were not about horror writing communities, they were about fan fiction writing communities. But as someone who has written both fan fiction and horror and been in communities for both, this community is very similar to a fan fiction writing community. What those scholars and researchers found was that positive reinforcement through the social support theory often causes the communities to grow closer. Not only that, but the honest integrity and intention behind good feedback is just as important as receiving good feedback itself, and thus encourages writers to become better. Many writers reported that when they received positive feedback in these studies, it caused them to continue writing and overall improve their writing capabilities. Thank you guys so much for watching my little video. I hope you liked it, and I would love to hear what you guys think. So I would appreciate comments down below.